listening to the Jake Asman Show on the SportsMap Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. It's been an exciting St. Patrick's Day, I have to imagine, in the New England area after the Patriots have continued to spend like some drunken sailors as free agency got underway unofficially on Monday. For more on the Patriots, the latest with them and some potential Deshaun Watson / Russell Wilson rumors, we go out to the Progressive guest line right now. We bring on a member of the SportsMap Radio team and a member of 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston. He is Alex Barth, and he joins us now. Alex, appreciate the time this morning, my friend. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What has been the reaction up in the New England area to what Bill Belichick and the Patriots have done?
People are, they're surprised. I think it's starting to turn into excitement, but the initial reaction was surprise. There were reports since January that the team would be uncharacteristically aggressive, and we weren't sure just, to what extent that meant, but they certainly have, by every definition of the term, been uncharacteristically aggressive so far.
You look at some of the signings they've made, which are the ones to you that are the most either surprising or just they're the most out of nowhere that nobody saw coming?
So I think a lot of people were expecting one of the tight ends. Few, if any, were expecting both. That's probably the big one. I think the Nelson Aguilar contract was kind of a surprise, too. He's not the kind of guy they usually sign. They probably paid him a little more than some people were expecting. So those two kind of stood out. And I think people are surprised that there's still no contract for David Andrews. We'll see what happens with him today. But people expected him back. They thought he'd be back. They thought the team would be willing to pay him. And with the report last night, he's hitting free agency. It looks like that might not happen.
Give me your thoughts on the fact that they didn't sign Thuney back to play guard. Was that a big surprise, or was that expected from those in the know?
No, that was pretty expected. They drafted Michael Onwenu in the 6th round last year. He comes out. He has, was arguably the best rookie lineman in football last year. They have Shaq Mason on the other side, who's been, a perennial. He's one of the best guards in football. He's on an incredibly team-friendly contract. And then they bring in Trent Brown, so there just wasn't a ton of room. There was going to be an odd man out. There's actually more than one odd man out. They also sent Marcus Cannon down to Houston, but I don't think, especially at that price, a lot of people are expecting to see Thuney back. They have a lot of holes they need to fill. Offensive line isn't one of them, so it would have been weird asset management.
Alex Barth from 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston, joining us here on the Jake Asman Show. You look at all this spending, Alex. I mean, is it as simple as, hey, they went 7-9 and they had money to spend, or does it go a little deeper? Like, hey, Brady just won a Super Bowl. Our roster's barren. We got to make a big splash. Like, what are the main factors behind the Patriots uncharacteristically here being this aggressive?
Well, the Patriots always spend to the cap. They're almost always, when you get to week one of the teams with the fewest cap space. They just had more this year than they've ever had. And I think Belichick kind of saw the writing on the wall of what this offseason was going to be and didn't get super aggressive last year because he knew he was going to have this opportunity. If you want to kind of bring in the Brady angle, and is this Bill responding to Brady winning the Super Bowl? It's totally fair to bring that up. I don't think that's how they're completely operating. Maybe it's a little bit, but they always spend to the cap. This is just a case of them having much more money and many more needs than they would in any other year.
Is it also because they have drafted poorly, specifically at the skill positions, that they had to go out there and be ultra aggressive in free agency?
Yeah, that's a part of it. Again, I when you look at the guys they've signed, I think that's more why they've signed the players they've signed than just the money they've spent overall. But there's certainly an element of that. They took 2 tight ends in the top 101 picks last year, and then they signed 2 tight ends this year. A couple of pass rushers they've taken in the last couple of years haven't panned out. They signed a couple pass rushers. They traded Deron Harmon before the 2020 season, never replaced him. They go out, they sign Jalen Mills, who can play a similar role. So I think there's certainly an element of shortcomings on the roster previously that have led to the decisions they've made. But I think this money was getting spent either way, even if they hit on some of those draft picks. It just, the allocation might look a little different.
Let's talk about the quarterback position, because I do think they are certainly an improved football team overall, but with Cam Newton there, I just don't think Cam Newton's an NFL starter at this point. I think he's maybe league average next year if everything goes right. What's the feeling with Cam? Is he going to be the guy? Will they draft the quarterback? How do you see that position playing out over the next couple months?
still give him a chance to compete for the starter, but given he was one of the least accurate quarterbacks in football last year, it's hard to imagine you spend all this money around Cam, because that's just a monumental risk. The belief right now is that, maybe they work something out with Jimmy Garoppolo. They've called on Garoppolo. The Niners, as of right now, aren't budging. That can obviously change. And people are starting to get into the idea of them moving up in the draft as well. And maybe Cam is your bridge guy to a quarterback like Trey Lance. So, week one, I think there's still a chance Cam is the starter, but I don't think the long-term plan, these are all 3 and 4 year deals they're signing. I don't think the long-term plan is for these guys to play with Cam Newton.
Would it be a massive mistake if they don't draft a quarterback in the first round?
Yes and no. I think if there's somebody that they truly believe in, then no price is too high. If they truly think Trey Lance is that guy, if Mac Jones is that guy, no price is too high to go get him. But at the same time, we see where the Bears are now since they drafted Trubisky. Drafting a quarterback just to draft a quarterback is one of the worst things you can do. So if they don't believe in anybody, this is what a team like the Chiefs did. This is what a team like Miami is trying to do. You fill out the rest of the roster, you get everybody else set, and then you go and you get the quarterback, and maybe that guy exists in the 2022 draft. So they're a mistake if they don't get their guy, if they think he's there this year, but they shouldn't force it. And if it means, trading for Garoppolo as a bridge and waiting a year, that's not the worst outcome. I think they can still be competitive with Garoppolo in this offense. It's a mistake if they don't bring anybody else in, and it's only Cam. But to draft the guy this year just to draft him, if they don't believe in any of these guys, I think would be overreactionary.
Could you see Belichick moving up for a guy? We haven't seen him ever do it. Obviously, Brady was there for 20 years, and the last season, of course, they signed Cam late and they had Stidham on the roster. But could you see the scenario where Bill would be willing, to trade multiple future ones to go up and get a guy if he believes in him?
I think it's possible. That report I mentioned earlier, the uncharacteristically aggressive, it would kind of be in line, right, with how they're operating right now and some of these aggressive moves they're making. Also, they're running out of roster spots. They only have, so many spots left with all these guys they're signing. They brought in 8 new players. That's almost a fifth of the roster. So when you do that, right, you can only roster so many draft picks. And it makes sense for them to consolidate picks right now. Most of these contracts, like I mentioned, 3 to 4 year deals. This is going to be a thing going forward where they have a lot of their roster now sort of set. I think it makes it a lot easier to consolidate picks, borrow from the future, and get aggressive and move up.
Alex Barth from the Sports Hub in Boston joining us here on our progressive guest line, talking about the Patriots and their big offseason thus far. How about the idea that Bill Belichick could be all in and call up his old buddy Nick Caserio right here in Houston and try and work out a deal for Deshaun Watson? What are the chances something crazy like that could actually happen?
Well, it's up to Deshaun Watson. I don't doubt the Patriots should make the call. I don't doubt they'd have a competitive offer. They might not have the most competitive offer, but they can get creative because they have that Stephon Gilmore trade chip as well. Watson has to waive the no trade clause. He has to want to come to New England. And the conversation yesterday, up until yesterday, nobody was really considering it. And then after the last couple of days, now it's like, well, okay, this is an attractive quarterback offense. This is an offense Watson could run very well. It's built to his strength. And maybe that's the move. I saw somebody threw out there that Houston wouldn't trade him to New England because of, what the reaction of the fan base and the history of the two franchises. But Jake, I think you and all you down there in Houston know the Houston Texans brass caring about what the fan thinks and then worrying about upsetting the fans. That ship has sailed for a couple years now. That's been gone. If they care, Jack Easterby would step down. So it's just a matter of if Watson would want it, and I don't know. That's a personal decision for him. He wants to go to Denver. He wants to go to San Francisco. Those are the reports right now. Different kind of situations than New England, so we'll see. But if he were to say, I'll okay it, if you want to send it to New England, I'll sign off on it, I think there's a real chance the Patriots can get competitive and be in the conversation.
Yeah, the thing is, the reports changed every day where he would go, and I've been told this: Nick Caserio is not going to be bullied by Deshaun Watson's camp and trade him to a team that he wants to go to. Like, if they're going to trade him, Deshaun Watson's got to be willing to go to the team that will make the best offer. Otherwise, the Texans have no incentive to trade him. They could fine him, be bad for a year, and then worry about it next offseason. So What would an offer look like hypothetically if New England wanted Deshaun? Like, how many picks would they be willing to offer, knowing that the 15th overall pick is not that attractive of an offer to start things off?
So I think you're looking at probably 2 to 3 firsts, 2 seconds, and 2 players. And the Patriots have some interesting players because of the connection between Caserio and the Patriots. He used to run the Patriots draft board. You have offensive tackle Isaiah Wynn, running back Sony Michel, guys who are still in their rookie deals. And then there's the Stephon Gilmore element. Would Houston want Stephon Gilmore and want to pay him as they go through a rebuild? Or can the Patriots maybe trade him, to a team like Green Bay? You get the 29th pick. You use 29 and 15 to move up into the top 10. And now all of a sudden, instead of sending Houston the 15th pick, you're sending him maybe the 7th, 8th, 9th picks, something like that. So that clears things up a little bit. They can get creative, but I think you're looking at 2 to 3 firsts, 2 seconds, and players, young players on rookie contracts.
How about Russell Wilson? How does he play in all this? Now, his agent put out a list of 4 teams he'd be willing to go to. New England was not on that list, but if Russ wants out, I think you'd have to update that list. Do you think New England would be interested in Russ, even if it cost a lot like Deshaun Watson would?
Yeah, I think they'd be interested. I don't think Russell Wilson's getting moved this year. It really feels like him seeing what some of these other quarterbacks are doing. Brady last year, Watson, Matthew Stafford this year. And I think he's frustrated with what Seattle's putting around him, specifically on the offensive line. I think he's frustrated that that concern isn't being heard. And I think starting to float these trade rumors out there is his way of telling the Seahawks, you better start listening to me. So I'm more, if things don't get fixed, I'll put more stock into the Russell Wilson thing next year, right? I think he becomes the Deshaun Watson of next offseason. As it stands right now, and things can change, and this has been a crazy offseason, but as it stands right now, I think that there's smoke, but I don't think there's fire there quite yet. But yes, if he was available, I absolutely believe the Patriots would be in on it. They have a play-action-heavy offense set up. Going to allow Wilson to get outside the pocket, throw outside the numbers. That's what he wants to do. I think it's an offense he'd work really well in. He could get excited about. It's just a matter of does he want to come to New England.
Alex Barth, 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston, with us here talking all things Patriots. As we wrap up, though, Alex, let's talk about the Red Sox for a moment. What is the reaction in Boston about the Red Sox new part owner, LeBron James?
Yeah, it's mixed. And, some people are saying, well, how are Boston fans going to handle their baseball team being owned by a guy who they've been pretty against in his noted battles with the Celtics? The secret is we don't like the principal owner. We don't like John Henry. We're not big fans of him. So I don't even know if – and look, I think it goes one way or the other. It's ultimately good for the Red Sox and good for baseball. I think you have to put the basketball rivalry aside and be happy about it. Will it get weird maybe if the Celtics play the Lakers in the finals? Sure, maybe a little bit. But it's ultimately good for baseball. And I don't even the biggest anti-LeBron people in Boston, he's still probably not top 5 in detested Red Sox owners. And since the Mookie Betts, he wasn't a part of the Mookie Betts trade. And everybody who was is ahead of him on that list. So it was a fun little story yesterday, but I don't. It's ultimately a good thing for the team, and I think people will, at the end of the day, realize that.
Just get ready for him to be wearing a Yankees hat at a future Red Sox playoff game.
So that is the question. That's where it could get ugly. People are saying that he better start wearing Red Sox attire, and we'll see how that goes. But he's spoken highly of the Red Sox in the past. He did so again this morning at immediate availability. So maybe this changes him. I wouldn't be surprised. Let's see him throw out a first pitch. Opening day in full Red Sox uniform and kind of let us all know where he's at.
He's a fraud baseball fan. I mean, you and I are good friends off there. He blocked me for calling out his, fraudulent baseball fandom on Twitter. So, good luck with LeBron, Boston. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, well, he wasn't an owner before, so maybe this changes things. Now he's got money in the game. So
there you go. He's Alex Barth. He does an excellent job covering the New England Patriots for 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston. You also can hear him with Tony Pepe weeknights on our network. So, I called him Tony Pepe, which I guess works, Alex, but it's Anthony.
I love
Pepe.
that. I love that.
I mean, do you call him Tony or do you go by Anthony with him?
I mean, I call him Pep, but if you want to call him Tony, go for it.
All right, we'll go with either one. I appreciate you getting up early and joining us, man, and continued success. Great job covering the team.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Alex Barth with us there on the Progressive Guest Line. Quick break, and we wrap up a Wednesday show for you here on Sportsnet.